Welcome to episode 12. You may not agree with us,
But
I'm Maris Lowery.
and I'm Eric Thomas.
And this podcast, like all of our podcasts, is brought to you in part by Massey Power Sports. Right now, you can get 0% financing. They have great Christmas gifts, especially if you want that side-by-side, Eric. And Bob Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP. You never know when you need a plumber. You need a plumber. You never know when who to call when your heat goes bad until it goes bad. Isn't that right?
That's right. And you had an incident a couple weeks ago
Yes,
where you
I
had to
did.
dial them up as well as I do. And they always are Johnny on the spot when you need them.
Well, for this episode, we have a special guest, and that is Rusty Udy from Loot Press. And if you follow high school sports by now, you have to know, Eric and Rusty, of all the madness that has taken place with the high school football pairings and also with the state volleyball tournament. We'll start with high school football. And, you know, I was all prepared, and I did my homework, Rusty and Eric. I've got all four classes of the seeding and playoffs. I got my sheet for 4A, 3A, AA. I was getting ready to talk about what do you think might be the upset in the first round? Who's who could you see that might spoil a bracket? And now that's not even what we have to talk about. And Eric, we're going to let you dive in here first before we get to Rusty. That Rusty maybe can shed more light on this situation. But it doesn't look like that the opening round of the playoffs will take place this weekend. As we're recording this on November the 11th, the opening round of the playoffs supposed to happen on November 15th. Who knows what will happen between right now when we're recording this and when this is released on November 14th.
Yeah, and this situation is kind of dire really for the teams who got booted out. And it's really, I think it's thrown a wrench into preparation for other teams too, because now you don't know. I mean, some teams know where they're at or where they're going to be. But a lot of things can happen, and I just think it's just a sad situation. It's been a great year of football, and I just hope it gets rectified and they figure it out.
And Rusty, to piggyback on what Eric said, in the preparation, you might say be in the same slot, but you thought you were going to play Team A, and now if they change it, now you got to play Team B. So you only have to prepare what you know to do, but you maybe not be able to prepare for a particular team.
No, I don't think you can really prepare for anybody. I mean, there are some instances like Beckley. You know, they were going to play the same team in either way. You know, so they would be probably fine, we think. But they don't know we don't know what the solution to this is going to be. I mean, the only thing we really know for sure right now is we don't know anything for sure. You know, with all this that's going on. So, you know, we have basically 4 teams out, 4 teams in. Those 4 teams that got knocked out, of course, are not going to, say, hey, okay, that's great. You know, they're going to, try to do what's best for their kids. So now we basically got 8 teams in flux, and we don't know, which point system we're going to use because, even though, it doesn't change maybe the other 15 spots, it definitely changed the locations. I mean, at one point, Bluefield was going to host a game. Now they're on the road, different things like that. So how are we going to rectify all this to get, what are we up to now? 18, in there instead of 16. I mean, it's crazy. It's gotten to a point where there's no simple solution to this.
And Eric, you can jump in on this too. I don't know, there might be a proposal that will come out in the next year or so. Hey, we'll just let them all in like they do in basketball, like they do in these other sports. Just have like a sectional, regional type of football playoff and just let everybody in every class. I hope it wouldn't come to that, but it could.
Yeah, I don't. If it comes to that, I mean, that's not really football. Football's 10 weeks. You got your bye week. You play those 10 games, you get into playoffs. So I don't think they'll be foolish enough to do that.
Well, I hope not.
But let's just hope they get it settled and rectified. And I'm in the section of belief where we shouldn't have 4 classes, but that's way above my pay grade. And I just think based on our population and a little bit of studying I did, and I've said this in 2 of our podcasts, how can we be aligned with North Carolina? North Carolina has almost 11 million people. We have 2 million people. We have 4 classes. They have 4 classes. That just doesn't add up to me.
And Rusty, I will agree with that. And actually, Eric rounded that number off because West Virginia is closer to 1.4 million and 11 million, like you said, in North Carolina. Yeah. To me, I just don't think West Virginia in football is big enough for 4 classes.
No, not really. But the biggest problem in West Virginia is we have such a wide range of population. You know, you've got, if you're going to group a certain group into AAA, and we've talked about this, you know, throughout the year. I mean, where's the cutoff? You know, I mean, you got a school at 1,800 playing a school at 900.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's the problem. Is like we are so spread out in these things. So in a way, 4 classes makes sense, but you can't have 16 teams in one class and all 16 make playoffs. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So, you know, I mean, I understand where they're kind of going with this a little bit, but you know, I mean, even when you get down to the bottom, you know, you got the single A schools that are really small playing some bigger teams, and you know, you can see it on the field. You know, when you got 25 kids, it's your roster playing a team that's got 50. It's just incredibly different. So,
Yeah.
you know, I understand the gist of it, but you're right. I mean, our population just makes it really, really tough.
And it seemed like basketball, it seemed to work because they've had this now, 4 years in basketball?
Right.
And that seemed to be okay. And I realized the numbers, and Eric, you can jump in on this too. You got to have numbers to play football. Like I said,
Right.
you know, we did a game with Liberty. We got 31 players, and some of these teams like Spring Valley have almost 100 players. And I know they're in 2 different classes, but still, in basketball, if you have the right 12, it really doesn't matter, I guess, how big your school is.
Yeah, well, you just hit that on, and we all played sports, and that's where basketball, I don't have a beef with it because
Right.
you can, it's easier to find 8 to 10 core players in basketball.
Right.
When you're talking about going up against us, I'm gonna throw Spring Mills and a Martinsburg, and what you're getting at, I'm gonna expound on what you're saying. It's stretched out so much that those border schools, and let's just call it like it is, Martinsburg, Spring Mills, Washington, all those. My father and my brother lives in Winchester, Virginia area. Okay, it's right
Eastern
there.
Panhandle, right there.
Right there in Eastern Panhandle. Musselman, all those can draw. If someone in Hagerstown, Maryland, or something, they want to go play in Martinsburg, it's just easier. And if you go way down south to over to Huntington's right there. You can't tell me some people, if they don't want to play in Ashland, Kentucky or somewhere, they're going to go find Ironton. They can come right across, you know, the bridge there. So I get what they're saying, and there has to be a cutoff. But I think, and I'm just going to throw another team out there that really surprised me. How can you have Spring Valley in? I don't get it. And you look on their sideline, they had 70 players.
It's interesting because they're one of the teams driving this. You know, they were one of the teams driving this change. You know, because they were 4A, and they drove the change in to get themselves back into AAA. You know, because they felt like they weren't as big. But that, you know, then you had Independence at AAA at the same time, and that's what John was saying. Is like, you know, their football team has more people on the field than our graduating class does. You know, so it's
Right.
it's huge. It's a huge difference.
And you know, Russ even made this point back at the time when Independence was in AAA, same as Shady. And I said, Independence got moved to AA. Then I said, Shady should say, hey, we should be in AA. And then somebody said, well, no, Shady's got way more students than Independence. And I'm saying, well, why were they in the same class to begin with?
Right.
But here, if you take a look at it, Eric, you make a really valid point. If you see how the state of West Virginia is, the way the outline is, you got Wheeling, you got Morgantown, you come down there on the western part of West Virginia, you got Parkersburg, you come down to Huntington, you have Charleston, and you go around Morgantown. You have all the big schools on the boundaries and all the small schools like in between. And you're right, Rusty, it's really hard to come up with that. But I just think for football, I think that they have to come up with some kind of solution. But I think 3 classes would suit the state better in football.
Well, and you know, it's funny because, you know, when this thing all transpired in the beginning, you know, there was a proposal that, you know, had more schools in the upper class and different things like that. And, you know, that was put together by athletic directors and coaches and things like that. But then, you know, once it goes to the approval board, which is more like the principals and things like that, they just kind of did their own thing. And, you know, that really just knocked things all out into a whack. And that's when all this mess started. And it's never been resolved since then. You know, the problem with all of this is we should have done this back in August and September. You know, that's when all these injunctions should have been filed. And, you know, what we're mad about should have been settled back then before we get to the postseason. Now we've got to the postseason and people don't like what's happening. So they're starting to file more injunctions. And Now we're out here talking about stuff we shouldn't be talking about.
Right, we should be talking about the games. Like I said, I was ready. I did my homework, and I even look at that. I got
You
it
might as well
colored.
just throw that
Look at
out
this.
the yard.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, look at that. I got it color coded and everything, and we don't get to do it. By the way, Eric, we have to do what?
We have to like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube. We finally have someone credible on the show now.
Yeah, well, that knows what's going on.
That's why we had to bring Rusty aboard, because I read a lot of his articles. By the way, you do a great job. And even when I need something, I'll shoot him a text, because I'm thinking, Maris is saying some BS. I need to know what's really going on.
Hey, Rusty, he tells me that all the time. But here's what's not BS. As our podcast brought to you by Motley's Plumbing and Heating. You never know when you need a plumber till you need a plumber. You never know who to call to fix your heat when your heat goes bad. And also by Massey Power Sports. And Rusty, it is a shame that I was looking forward to this week, start. As Eric said, we had a great high school season. We had one game that Eric and I on video productions that we couldn't do. It got with the hurricane, the Independence Bluefield game. But outside of that, Eric, we had 11 weeks. Well, actually, we got a couple extra games in there. But we had middle school football, we had high school football. It all worked out. Now we were looking at the playoffs. But Rusty, I think when you talk about it should have been worked out in August. Remember, right before the season, is when all this change happened. Why couldn't they have worked all this out like over the summer so we wouldn't be diving with this first of the season and now into the postseason?
Yeah, I think, this is my opinion. I mean, I just thought they ran this thing too fast.
Me too.
Because, we should have said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We'll start it with 25-26. And then that way we could beat all this through the court.
That's right.
Find out what's good, what's bad, and work at it from there. But we just rammed it through. And now we've just got complete chaos.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think, if your opinion of why you think that the powers to be, whoever this may be, why do you think they ran it through so quick?
I have no idea. Honestly, they just seem really intent on getting a 4-class system going in basically all classes. Now there's certain sports it'll just never work in, and until we get more participants.
Right.
But I really don't know what the ultimate goal behind that was. It has been really good for basketball, I think. There are some detractors, and everybody keeps saying well, the first round games are not very good. This and that. Well, the first round games have not been great for years.
Well,
when you get 1 verse 8 and 2 verse 7, you don't get too many of those good ones.
And
4-5 is good and 3-6 is good.
And you're right, because Eric, you can dive in this too, because we all follow the NCAA tournament, and the NCAA tournament, Rusty, you and I go back to the days when they only had 32 teams, and at one time even less than that. We're old enough to remember that, and now it's expanded all the way to 68. And you're always going to get some games that are going to be close. That's just the way it is.
That's part of it. We've had in the last several years, we all three go to the state tournaments. There's been a couple of 8-1s, 7-2s.
I was going to say, if they get the opportunity,
but that's why
level.
That's right. You're starting to see it more and more now.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when it comes to basketball, the opportunity is good. It's there.
Yep.
It's there.
But we know for a fact that opportunity in basketball is different than opportunity.
Exactly, and that's why.
And we've talked about that. The rosters are different, and 2 or 3 really good players in basketball can make a huge difference.
Right.
2 or 3 really good players in football make a difference, but they can't make that kind of
unless
difference.
one's blocking, running, and they're doing it all.
That's right.
And it's just tough, and that's just a fact. And it really surprised me about Spring Valley. They're 3 years removed from playing in the state championship.
Exactly.
Right.
3 years, and had 3 dudes go to college. I mean, major college,
big college,
and big college, and contribute.
WVU, Tennessee.
And WVU, Tennessee, Marshall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what. I mean, they're right there. What is their? I think their population was still. It surprised me. It said it was 900.
Yeah,
their enrollment.
I say, where they hiding? They're hiding somebody in the trees or something.
Well, Rusty, let me put you on the spot a little bit. In your opinion, if you had to put on your predictor hat, how do you think this is going to shake out?
I'll be 100% shocked if we play Friday or Saturday.
All right, I don't think we'll play this weekend. What do you think, Eric? I don't think we'll play.
No. From Dave Price, or what is that his name?
Dave Price, yes. Yeah.
I went back and listened to him. Pretty much he's saying, and it was like, don't point the finger at me. You need to go to your local administrators. They're the one. We're just the governing body. They gave it to us, and we're implementing it. And that's something that I really think that turned my thoughts around on it, because I've been bashing the WVSSAC.
Well, and there's kind of the connecting point for all of us.
Correct.
We think they run things, and and they kind of do run things, but they don't dictate the policy. The policy
They just
dictates.
enforce it.
They're kind
Yes.
of I always call it the middle management guy. You're the one out there in front of the customer, kind of taking the beating from the customer, but you're not the one setting the policies. And that's kind of what they're doing a little bit. And
they're the messenger,
right? And because I kind of had put on Facebook. I was like, look, everybody needs to calm down a little bit. I understand we're all upset, and I understand we're all frustrated, but we're frustrated to the wrong people here. The WVSSAC is just implementing what the courts say. And their option is implement it or be in contempt of court. That's your options.
And no one wants to be in contempt of court.
It's a no-brainer.
And here's another thing, and I'll get both you guys to weigh in this, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if something doesn't work out to a team's satisfaction, what do you foresee that some teams say, well, look, we're just going to forfeit. We're not going to play it. We thought we were here. We should be here. We don't like how they did it, and we're just going to toss in the towel. I hope that doesn't happen. Could you see that happen?
Right now, I could see just about anything.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What I'm saying? I would hope that's not going to be the case because I'm like you. You got teams right now fighting to get into a 16 seed, which is not a very good option to play in one seed.
No.
Okay, but you got them fighting to get in there. So I think everybody's going to play. I just think we had just a really bad situation where we had some in and we booted them out without them losing a game or something like that. Put some more in because of a court decision, and that's where the problem came.
And Eric, I'll ask you this, and if we just move back a week and we move everything back 1 week, I don't think it'll be that bad. And I understand, of course, that University of Charleston is scheduled to host a college football playoff at Laley Field where the state championships are to be held. But if you couldn't play on Friday and Saturday, you could play on Thursday and Friday. And I don't think it would be all that bad. I want to get both of your takes on that first, Steve.
You have to get it in when you can. But the thing is, we all three need to touch on every policy and things that are made now. It's hurting the kids.
Right.
Ultimately, they're the ones out there since June, whenever back in January when they start their weight lift, their training. And now they're put in, and you have a lot of these guys, you're going to see the same names in basketball. So it's kind of going to spill over and hurting the quality, of basketball when they're going to be ready to play and stuff. And that's the one thing I don't like.
Yeah. And then even you're going to see the same thing in volleyball. You got a bunch of, especially in the lower classes, single A, double A, you got a lot of kids playing football, they play basketball, volleyball, they play basketball. And so now you're going to have problems with, single A volleyball may be 2 weeks out now. It's hard to say. So what do they do? You haven't played a game for 2 weeks, and now we're going to play a state tournament game, and volleyball. Basketball for girls start today. Right. So are they practicing? It's a mess.
Here's the thing too, and like I said, I think the best case scenario under this current situation that they have, that if we don't play and this looks like it's not going to happen on the weekend of November 15th. If you start the weekend of the 22nd, it just puts you back a week. So you run the state championship games a week later. And if you can't play on Saturday, you play on Thursday and Friday and go with it. I think
they would have to do.
I think that's the best case scenario that would that they could do.
Yeah, and see, that's what's the problem with all this is it creates issues that we've never had to address or never really thought we would be addressing. You got all the schedules set up and everybody's ready to go. But now we got all kinds of chaos breaking loose, and it's not good for the sports, not good for the kids at all.
And like you said, it's all really should be about the kids because when the kids want to play, the fans want to go, the broadcasters and the media, we want to cover it. Yeah. We just want the games. We want this other nonsense to be done. We want the games.
And guys, say what you want to. You and I talk about it. A couple teams might be getting on a roll, and then there you go.
Breaks their momentum.
Breaks their momentum, breaks what's going on.
Even in professional, we always talk about, is the team that gets the bye really benefit from that bye? Because the team that keeps playing always seems to give that team either upset them or give them a game that we never thought they'd get.
Yeah,
that's right.
Is it rust or rest?
Right. Sometimes, right. And it happens a lot in baseball.
Right,
exactly.
And now you touched on
every year in baseball.
Rusty, you touched on volleyball. Maybe you can shed some light on the state volleyball tournament because we know we're going to get AA, AAA, and 4A is going to play, and that starts in Charleston this week. But now the single A. Why can't they field the 8th team? Explain this to me because I'm not really up to speed on this, and maybe some of our viewers are not up to speed on this too. So if you can, explain this the best way you can.
Okay, it's a lot has to do with the 4-class system. Okay, you got teams playing like Tyler Consolidated is the focal point of all this. Okay, they play single A football. Okay, well they played double A in volleyball. Well, once it came down to the sectional time, they didn't want to play double A in volleyball anymore. They want to go back and play single A. So they filed an injunction that they should be in single A. Okay, so they kind of set it up to where they would play in single A because it's an injunction. SSAC has no choice but to put them in there. And then what happened was that I think there was another injunction that didn't allow them to play. I think it was St. Mary's may have filed one, and St. Mary's couldn't, so they wouldn't have to play Tyler Consolidated in the single A. So St. Mary's was in, we had everything set up, and then all of a sudden Tyler Consolidated says, no, this is not right. So they set it up to where Tyler Consolidated and St. Mary's would play at the state tournament tomorrow. The winner of that game would play East Hardy.
Would be the 8th seed.
Would be the 8th seed, okay? And that sounds good, except for the fact that Tyler Consolidated is really good, okay? When they were in double A, they were number 7 in double A, all right? Double A is easily the toughest from top to bottom this year, okay? You've got Oak Glen, who's the defending state champion, who won it 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. You got Philip Barber, that's won it 2 out of the last 3. They were runner-up. That's number 2.
Right.
And as good as James Monroe is, they're at number 4. So, I mean, double A is a beast.
Yes.
Okay. So all of a sudden now, I mean, and I'm just, my feeling is like, okay, well, we don't want to have to go through that gauntlet. We want to go to single A where we think we can compete. Okay. Because we're playing single A in football, supposedly. All right. So what happens is East Hardy's like, wait a minute. We're the number 1 seed. We're supposed to be playing a team that is in 8th seed. Well, Tyler Consolidated, if they were actually in single A, would not fall as an 8th seed.
No, they'd be a 1 or 2.
They'd be at least in the top 4.
Yeah.
Okay, in single A. So, their opening round would be against Tyler Consolidated, most likely. Now, because Tyler Consolidated has beaten St. Mary's twice this year in regular season. Okay, so then East Hardy's like, nope, not happening. Okay, so they filed the injunction. That can't be heard until tomorrow because of Veterans Day today. Okay. Other schools were rumored to follow suit. I have not heard for a fact if they've done that, but that's why we are in limbo now with the single A.
Now, to me, that makes sense. If you played in double A all year, when the state tournament comes, you should not be able to go to single A.
That's where it really gets to be a problem is why was this not done? You knew what you were
you knew what you were getting into, right?
In August.
So, yes. So, and that's why, and you can't be mad at East Hardy because I can see where they're coming from.
Absolutely.
I agree with them. East Hardy should say, well, I don't want to be number 1 seed anymore. Let's let the number 4 seed be number 1 and play.
Yeah, it's almost like you would have to reseed it again.
Well, let me ask you this, and maybe the league couldn't have judged when an injunction comes, like say, no, you're going to play where you played all year. Couldn't a judge just come out and do that?
I guess. I mean, if you come up with anything the court makes sense.
All right, but I'm just saying though. But I'm just saying, but the judges, and I know that they're kind of hanging to their constituents and this and that because they're voted in and this and that, so they don't want to do this and that. But yeah, but I mean, to me, just common sense would be you played in this class. That would be like a team now, like your Dallas Cowboys having a rough year.
Yeah.
Not to pick on the Cowboys. Instead of playing the NFC East, let's go over and play the other. What's the weakest division now? The AFC South. Let's just switch and go to the AFC South because things aren't working out too good.
Oh, the AFC South the other day. We play Houston Monday.
There you go. They done put you in the AFC South, right?
We got relegated.
Right.
Like soccer. We're going to go do it like soccer.
But I mean, to me, what happened to the law of common sense?
Well, I don't know. This is all such a mess right now that I don't even know what your solution can be. I mean, because if, let's say the East Hardy judge says, no, they can't do that, just like you're saying. Right. Well, do you think Tyler's going to say, okay, that's great?
No, they'll go find a judge who will say.
We're going to go again. And so, that's why we're looking at, they're thinking it's going to be a couple of weeks or so that, and that's in a really good light because court system doesn't move very fast.
No.
It's got to go to a higher court. Eventually, it's got to go to a point that says this is what it is.
And if and when they get it settled, the Charleston may not be available to play in, and and it won't be the same in the same type of atmosphere and the same type of crowds that you would have if it would have been in a.
It's like you've been saying all along. It's the kids.
It's the kids.
That
they get penalized. Yeah.
You've got teams that's worked their butt off to get to this point. 7 of them for sure, and really 8 with St. Mary's,
Right.
that are now not going to get a play in the Civic Center because we got a lot of Christmas stuff going on in December,
Right.
in November.
Christmas parties.
Right.
I mean, people.
They might have concerts.
Concerts.
Right.
Where it's going to happen, they're going to figure out where it's going to happen. You know,
Logistically, it's going to be a
it's
nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
But one
and
thing-
the kids won't get to be there. You know,
That's right.
They won't be in that environment that they would have been in. So they
One
earned
thing-
to be in.
One thing we know, we have to do what, Eric?
Like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And our podcast is brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP. You never know when you need a plumber till you need a plumber. You never know when who to call when your heat goes bad until it does, and you can call Modley's. Also by Massey Power Sports. So, this was the podcast, Rusty. We thought we were going to be talking about all these great games. Like I said, I did all my homework. I wrote it down, color-coded in the school's colors. I was ready. I had a lot of questions for you and Eric for this, and now I guess I might have to tear all this up and start all over again,
Yeah, we have
or
no
just start
idea.
scratching through it, because who knows? Well, let me ask you this. Would you have any idea, and I guess you maybe wouldn't, as to when we'll actually know who's going to play who and when that'll happen?
Well, I think we'll get a little more clarity tomorrow because there actually will, the courts will be there and we can get some decisions and then kind of go from that point.
But as you said, what if one judge makes a ruling
Right.
tomorrow and then somebody doesn't get what they like and they take it to another judge on Wednesday?
Exactly.
We could spread this thing out. I mean, it
It's
could,
not
who knows
if,
when it
it's
could
when.
end.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's
Right.
going to happen, but it's
That's
just
exactly.
when.
And I think Rusty hit it on the head. That's why we brought this credible
Right.
person to our podcast, because we're not playing this week. I'm pretty sure Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday. You know what else I just thought about too? Now it runs into weather too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's what I said. It's usually rough playing at the first weekend of December anyway.
Right.
Now we're getting into the middle of December.
Yes.
If maybe later. you
Yeah.
know. And the other thing was what you said. I mean, basketball season
Right.
will be. I mean, basketball season will be a mess now.
Wrestling,
Yeah.
all that.
Got
I
some
mean, it
wrestling?
affects. It's a lot of guys that do
It's just
do
not
that.
set up to be that way. I mean,
It's
we've
not.
always complained a little bit about the sports being so tight against each other anyway.
Yeah.
Now they're really tight against each other.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is something maybe totally different, but what would you think if you had 10 games in 10 weeks, if you wouldn't have that bye week, so they wouldn't be so pressed together? What do you think about that?
I'm not real crazy about bye weeks. I mean, it seems like sometimes they fall at good times and stuff, but I know it may be tough to get 10 games in 10 weeks. For some reason, teams are only playing 9 now.
But
for a
back
lot
in
of
our
reasons,
day, Rusty, and that's been a long, long day ago, right? Long time ago. There was 10 games in 10 weeks, and that might have been, Eric,
Yeah.
you played
yeah,
too.
Definitely.
Well, we had more schools. for one
Right, we
thing,
had more schools.
and we had teams not dodging each other.
Well, that's another thing too. We had
Sure.
John Beasley on in the podcast where Beckley went 50 years ago went 10-0
Yeah.
and couldn't get in the playoffs
Yep.
because he had a whole lot more schools. Now
Yep.
you've got less schools and they all get in. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think that over 50 years things would progress and be better,
Right.
not worse. But
Well,
this
it's
is
kind
just
of
a
like what we were
mess.
talking about earlier. We have less schools now,
Right.
So it doesn't make sense, to have, so many teams in the playoffs. Now I understand why they do it. I get it. There's money there and there's different things like that. But we really don't have enough teams to have 16.
Right.
It was 8 when we were in high
Right.
school. And there were some really good teams from 9 to about 15. I mean, really good teams that got knocked out of the playoffs. One year there at Shady.
Well, our sophomore year,
Yeah.
1978, we were
Yeah.
8-2, and we lost 2 games by 2 points and finished ninth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't get in the playoffs. But
Right.
that's a team that could have been a viable
Right, and
playoff.
you
Yeah, but
said
my junior year.
right. That's what I said. You
Right.
talked about that at
We
Independence.
went
when you-
8.
yeah.
We went 8-2.
Yep.
Our losses were at number 3 Buffalo Wayne, 14-12,
Yep.
and then we lost to a Hillbilly team
Yep.
at their place. Close game.
Yep. And can't get in.
Can't get in the playoffs.
Yeah. And that's what, there was time, at that time, there was enough good teams for 16. I don't think we can say that now. I mean, really, when you get past about 11, it starts to get a little weaker.
Mm-hmm.
A little too weak.
And I don't have it in front of me, but I think I'd be correct in this. I don't think and not counting the COVID year, I don't think a 16 has ever beaten a 1, right, or 15 beaten a 2. Not counting the COVID year.
Well, I was going to say, because the COVID year, we had what?
The COVID year,
Fairmont,
I think,
believe
yeah,
it?
you had that, but the COVID year wasn't really justification
that-
because that wasn't a real
way too many
15. Yeah, they weren't real.
factors.
But outside of the COVID year in 2020,
Yeah.
we've never had a 16 beat a 1 or 15 beat a 2. And basically 8 teams. That means you can't dodge anybody. You got to
Right.
play a really good schedule,
Right.
and you really got to fight and earn your way in.
And not every sport has 4 classes for that very reason. We just don't have enough. enough teams and enough to fill it out. Basketball is kind of the exception, and has done pretty good, as far as state tournament stuff goes, which does seem like it's forever now, for the state tournament to be over. But, it's just not set up for every sport.
Well, the one thing I can say, and like Eric alluded to earlier, we're all three at the state tournament, and I think that it's been 4 years now, right, since they've gone to 4 classes. I personally have not heard anybody complain about the 4 classes. The way I look at it, if they keep it where it is, I'm fine with it. If they went back to AAA, I'm fine with it. But I don't have any complaints of what they're doing in
I
basketball.
like it because there's a lot of teams that come down there that I've never seen before.
Right.
They're from, especially teams from up north. There's a lot of good teams that come down, and quite honestly, the basketball seems. Last year the final day of basketball
was really good.
It was great, and it wasn't a scoring delight, by any means.
They were close, exciting games.
Close, exciting games, and there is some value in defense in basketball, and I think that those teams just made it tough on teams.
All right, now we're going to switch a little bit to college football. We're coming down to the end of this podcast, and we've said our word in high school football. And Rusty, we're going to have you jump in here because I know you follow the Mountaineers as Eric does. And Eric, you were in Cincinnati over the weekend, and the Mountaineers got a huge win. They were up 24-7. I told Eric I was watching the game, and the Mountaineers were up 24-7. And I flipped over to watch Miami and Georgia Tech. And like 2 commercials later, I flipped back, it was 24-21. It's just like in a blink of an eye, it went from 24-7 to 24-21. But I told Eric this over the week, this past weekend, Rusty. One of the things I thought was ironic that West Virginia fires their defensive coordinator, and they get 2 touchdowns off their defense. So what's your take on that?
Well, I've watched West Virginia sports, since some guy named Bobby Bowden.
Yeah, him. He's probably turned over his grave now. How bad Florida State is, but that's another issue.
I've always joked. I was like, look, it doesn't matter the players, it doesn't matter the coach. It's just West Virginia sports. It's the way it works. They could have been ahead 50-7, and that game would have been close at the end.
Yeah,
now, you've seen that for how many years now?
For a lot of years.
Yeah, it's just the way it seems to be with West Virginia sports. So the fact that they came back was absolutely no shock. It's going to come down to the wire, and it just is what it is. So I get tickled at people going all off the rails and everything. A month ago we were firing Neil Brown on the field and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
I've never been on that side of the fire Neil Brown thing because schematically things. The coach gets blamed too much, especially when you get to that level. It's the Jimmy and Joes out there. It's the guy missing. It's the guy looking at the other guy against Iowa State when I was there. And I had my friend Richie Horton was with me. And when they lined up, and I said, that guy is uncovered. Yeah. And he was like, oh, surely I'll bump somebody over. And the dude just looked at the quarterback and was like,
throw it to me. Nobody's on me.
Just to go. But here's my late assessment of the Cincinnati game. For one, I really didn't think we were ever going to lose that game, even when they got never thought.
Yeah, I didn't
so I'm gonna give you an interesting stat, and people can say, well, they had 400 yards. Well, they did, but here's why: they ran 70 some plays. Right. We only ran 4 plays in the whole fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think I heard Neil Brown say they ran 42 total plays.
They ran 42 total plays in the fourth quarter. So if that's not good defense, I don't know what it is. You kept them in, but they moved it in between the 20s. But when the defense needed to bow up and put pressure on them, and that's one thing I thought it seemed a little different with our defensive scheme. Same players, but I think third down, first down, it seemed like we did something different. Right. We didn't react, we attacked. Right. And on that first down, so it put that quarterback in a bad situation.
Well, like I said, of the 4 touchdowns West Virginia got, half of them were from on defense. And now the Mountaineers have a home game. They're playing Baylor this weekend.
Started out an early dog in that game.
Yes.
Which is kind of odd.
And I'm surprised.
Baylor's won 3 in a row.
I'm surprised at that, though. West Virginia.
I love it
here.
I love it.
And also got to give a shout out to the Marshall Thunder and her. They're bowl eligible. And man, they went to Southern Miss. Of course, Southern Miss was only 1-7, now 1-8. Marshall dogged them 37-3.
But they did what they should to a 1-7. I mean, that's another coach that gets fired all the time. You should hear. Of course, I played at Marshall. You should hear. Hey, his brother's one of them. We're gonna talk about. Hey, they just want to fire the guy. And this is his 4th straight bowl.
Well, Rusty, I've said this. Fans of all teams on every level have these 2 things. They always want to fire the coach. Whatever
They want the backup
quarterback you got in there, we
That's
want the
right.
other guy.
Yeah.
Right? That's just the way it is. But shout out to Marshall. They'll have a bye week. They'll take on Old Dominion their next game. And then, we talk a little bit about Virginia Tech because they're local. And I know Eric don't like Virginia Tech. You probably don't either, Rusty, being a big Mountaineer fan. But
My favorite.
Clemson beats Tech, and Tech's got a bye week. They finish up with North Carolina and Duke. But Tech right now, and Eric, we had talked about it a couple weeks ago, and this has probably been music to your ear too, Rusty, because Eric was hoping that Tech and West Virginia would play in a bowl game, and he said it would sell a lot of tickets. It'd be great for both
It would.
fan
Oh,
bases.
it would be really.
It would if they
Yeah.
both get 6 wins. I
Heck
mean,
yeah.
that would be.
Heck yeah.
You know, both people. You're thinking about the cash, which you are.
If you
But
want to get people in the
that's-
seats,
that's
the way
right.
you do it.
But here's the thing, with West Virginia trending up after winning 2 in a row, and Virginia Tech trending down after losing, I think, they lost maybe 3 in a row.
And that Duke and North Carolina's not a gimme. Now.
No,
No, not at
Tech
all.
may not even find themselves bowl eligible
Yeah.
to even
Like
play.
I said,
Yeah. All right, now we're going to switch gears to the National Football League. And we got to do what, Eric?
you gotta like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And that's right. This podcast, like all of our podcasts, brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP, and by Massey's Power Sports. All right, we got to talk. We do a segment here, Rusty. You can jump in on this. Have our barking dog. Now, Eric hit his barking dog. After he got off to a good start, he was 3-1. He lost about 4 straight weeks in a row. But he had the Steelers over the Commanders, and the Steelers won straight up, 28-27. So now, Eric, that makes you an even 5-5 on the year.
Right, 500.
Now,
That was a
I'm
really
going
good call.
I hadn't
now-
lost any money.
Now-
I pushed
now-
all in on that one.
Right,
All in.
now my barking dog, I'm going to leave this up to Eric. I'm going to see what you take. Technically, I could have won it because it was Detroit a 3.5-point favorite. And I had Houston over Detroit. I said they'd win the game, and Houston should have, could have, but they didn't. But the field goal, Detroit hits it 26-23. But actually in Vegas, if you had Houston, you were on the right side. So I'm going to leave that up to you. If you think it should be a push, I'll take the L if you give me the L. I'll take the W if you give me the W. I'm going to leave that up to
Hey,
you.
well, it's a push. Nobody wins.
Well, no, but it was 3.5, and they covered by
Yeah,
half.
we're doing by the line. Yeah,
All right,
I'll
so
give it to you.
that will go as a win. So Rusty, I'm 6-4 picking dogs, and Eric is 5-5.
Yeah, my 14 parlay got beat on by somebody.
Somebody. All right,
Hope you didn't play
That's a
us.
lot of points, man.
Come on, man.
That's a lot of points at home.
but Rusty, I know you're a sports fan. How much do you follow the NFL? Do you follow it really
Well,
heavily?
actually, the NFL is what I get to watch the most because a lot of times on Saturday, I have high school
You're busy
events
working,
on
right.
Saturday.
Yeah.
So I do watch a little bit, and I've got, I've set up a little 2-screen deal with my computer. I work on one, and I watch on the other, and I can split the games and stuff. So
Good stuff.
I do get to watch some, but Sundays, man, it's usually just sitting. It's 4 screens, 1 o'clock, 4 screens, at 4
At
o'clock.
4 o'clock. Well, here's the thing. I think that maybe both of you agree. Detroit is probably playing the best of any team in the NFL, but it's still hard to have anybody until somebody beats the Kansas City Chiefs. Like the way the Chiefs beat the Broncos, and it looked like the Chiefs were dead in the water, and it looked like they've been dead in the water for like 6 weeks.
I was gonna
But they
say,
find a way to win every time.
But eventually that runs out.
Well, it
You know what I'm
does.
saying? I mean, they're really like a cat with 9 lives right now.
Well-
and don't get me wrong, I'm very impressed with Kansas City. I mean, they're doing a really good job. But there's a couple of those games that questionable call at the end. Would have
Right.
changed the flow.
That's
We
true.
got one guy that's out of bounds that far that changes.
Likely the bottom.
So,
Yeah.
you know how that eventually that luck. You might get it here, but back here it's going to run out just a little.
Well, I told Eric a few podcasts ago, I think the Chiefs are like the basketball version of the Bulls. I think like Mahomes is like the Michael Jordan, like the Derek Jeter. I think like Andy Reid is like the Phil Jackson of football. I think that's who they are. They just
They're
find
really
a
good
way.
now. There's no
Well,
doubt.
here's the
Right.
thing. My assessment of the Chiefs, though, and it should scare people even with their luck. That defense is really good.
It's really
They are
good.
pretty
Think
good.
about it. They're winning games in the 14, 16. I mean,
Yeah.
but once Mahomes is not playing the greatest, but when you need a drive out of him, he's going to give it to you and get down the field.
It's not
So
the typical offense you
Right.
see.
exactly right. And they're going to get a lot of injured players back.
Before we get into our barking dogs, by the way, just in case you want to take the Chiefs, they are an underdog this week at Buffalo, and they've really owned Buffalo. Beat them maybe one time in the regular season, but I think the Chiefs have beat them 4 of the last 5. And the Chiefs beat Buffalo when it counts, but Buffalo is a 3-point favorite. But I'm not quite ready. I know I said all this about the Chiefs, and I don't know if I want to take the Chiefs in my barking dog. So Eric, we're going to start out with you. You're 5-5. You're a barking dog this week in the
Oh
National
man, it's
Football
easy
League.
for me. The Cincinnati Bengals.
And they are playing the Chargers.
The
this
Chargers.
week. Okay.
At the Chargers, -2.5. Bengals have to get them one. Because this is the team that they have to beat if they're trying to get into that. Right now, if you would see the teams, I think the Chargers would be like 8.
And you got to be top 7.
Top 7. So this is a game where both of those teams later on in the year may be fighting for that spot. So I'm going with the Bengals,
Okay.
the Burrows to go on the road.
Now, I was listening to Rusty because I do agree with him. The Chiefs have had like 9 lives, maybe 10 as a cat. And maybe this is the week that they don't win, even though they are an underdog. So I'm going to tell you my barking dog for this week. Division home dogs cover 70% of the time. And I think this is a game that this division home dog could win straight out. The Pittsburgh Steelers. They're getting 3.5 from Baltimore at home. I like the Steelers this week.
I think that's a good pick. I mean, I really do. That would be the one I would choose because, I figured they were going to be, underdogs coming in. But, the Steelers have really played well this year.
Yes,
I mean, it
and
hurts my heart to say that.
The
out loud.
addition of Russell Wilson coming back has made the real difference in Pittsburgh because they've always been good defensively.
Right.
And I've always think Mike Tomlin's a good coach. And now you add that veteran leadership, that quarterback with Russell Wilson. I think it makes all the difference for the Steelers.
Yeah, I think the Steelers, I wouldn't be shocked if they went outright.
Yeah. All right, Eric, final thought before we say our goodbyes for this podcast.
Well, let's hope and pray that the courts can sort this out and maybe the kids will get to play this weekend. So not looking good, but let's have some hope for the football playoffs to start. And pray for the volleyball. Please let them go.
And Rusty, your final thoughts?
I just hope we can kind of get this mess settled in the court-wise, because, we just keep worrying about too many other things right now. We just need to let the kids play and get these things settled on the field. I mean, this weekend I saw 2 of the most exciting soccer games I've ever seen, probably since I've followed soccer. Beckley winning the state championship was incredible.
Yeah.
So, when the kids just get to go out there and do their thing, the kids put on a show. We just need to let the kids put on a show.
I agree. The kids don't care who, when, where, how they play. They just want to play. Just let the games begin. Hopefully this will work out. And hopefully when they do say, hey, these are the pairings that we get ready to have the games, hopefully we don't have like an injunction again to maybe the day before the playoffs are open again. Hopefully, like you said, Eric, we pray.
The pattern we got going on.
That we can get it through. Well, we appreciate everybody out there, your attendance on this. Once again, Eric, we have to do what?
Like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube.
And as all of our podcasts are brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP, and by Massey Power Sports. For everybody, have a good evening.